There's a part of you that you've been avoiding your entire life. You see it in moments of shame, hear it in the silence after a lie, and feel it in the pit of your stomach when you're alone. It's the part that whispers truths you don't want to hear. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the hidden self that holds everything you repress, deny, or disown. And whether you like it or not, it's running your life in the background. You were taught to smile through discomfort, to bury your rage, to be good, even when your soul screamed otherwise. Over time, those emotions didn't vanish. They just went underground, forming a second self, forged in the darkness. Most people live their entire lives without ever turning to face it. They distract themselves with work, relationships, social media, anything to keep from looking in that mirror. But the truth is, what you suppress controls you. What you refuse to face becomes the architect of your fate. Jung wasn't offering a metaphor. He meant this literally. If you don't confront your shadow, it will find its way into your relationships, your habits, your choices, silently sabotaging everything you try to build. But here's the terrifying beauty. Once you begin the work of meeting your shadow, even just a little every day, your life begins to shift in ways you never imagined. The clarity, the inner strength, the raw sense of power, it all starts when you finally stop running. This isn't about self-help slogans or surface-level positivity. It's about truth. Messy, painful, liberating truth. For 30 days, if you dare, you'll walk through the terrain of your inner world and come face to face with parts of yourself that have been locked away for years. And if you stay with it, if you lean into the discomfort and let it speak, you won't recognize the person staring back at you in the mirror. Not because you'll have become someone new, but because you'll have finally met the person you were always meant to be. You wake up every morning and put on a mask. Sometimes it's confidence, sometimes it's kindness, sometimes it's indifference. And yet beneath it all there's something else. A flicker of rage when you're interrupted. A subtle jealousy when someone succeeds. A quiet bitterness when you're not chosen. These are not random emotions. They are fragments of your shadow. And the tragedy is, most people will never realize that the very parts of themselves they suppress are the keys to their transformation. Carl Jung believed the shadow is formed in childhood. It begins the moment you first hear, "Don't say that," or "Be a good boy," or "Nice girls don't act like that." A child doesn't know how to process rejection, especially from the people they depend on to survive. So what do? They hide it, bury it, push it down. Over time, those parts of themselves, the anger, the sadness, the rebellion, get locked away in a psychological basement. But the door never stays shut, not forever. You can see it when someone explodes over something small, when a kind person turns cruel under stress, when a confident person self-destructs without warning. These moments are not breakdowns. They are breakthroughs of the shadow, rising to the surface because it was never truly gone. It was only waiting for a crack in the mask, waiting to be acknowledged, waiting to be seen. The terrifying part is that your shadow doesn't just hold the bad parts of you. It also holds your deepest potential, your confidence, your assertiveness, your creativity. Because in order to fit in, you didn't just bury what was unacceptable to others. You also buried what made you powerful. You dimmed your own light, just to be loved in the dark. That's why integrating the shadow is not about becoming someone different. It's about becoming whole. Imagine a version of you that's not afraid to speak up, set boundaries, or say no without guilt. That version exists, but it's trapped behind layers of shame and silence. The first step is not to fix yourself, it's to face yourself, and that takes brutal honesty. You'll need to sit with your envy, your resentment, your need for control, not to judge it, but to understand it. To ask, where did this begin? What does this part of me want? What is it trying to protect me from? Most people skip this process. They chase validation, they chase achievement, they chase love. But no matter what they achieve, they still feel hollow, because their shadow remains unacknowledged. You can't love yourself fully when you only love the parts that look good on paper. Real self-love includes your darkness. It embraces your wounds. It allows your pain to speak. And in that speaking, something changes. Not instantly, not dramatically, but quietly, like a seed breaking through the soil after years underground. There's a reason this work is called integration and not elimination. You are not here to kill the shadow. You're here to make space for it, to understand its language, to see its value. It's trying to show you where you're still in chains. Every trigger, every reaction, every moment of discomfort, it's a map. And if you follow it with curiosity instead of judgment, it will lead you to the places you need to heal the most. This is not a quick fix. It's not supposed to be. Transformation doesn't happen by adding more light. It happens by bringing light to the places you were too afraid to go. The process will break you open. You'll feel lost. You'll want to turn back. But if you stay, you will begin to see glimpses of a self that's deeper, bolder, more alive than you ever thought possible. A version of you that doesn't need to perform or pretend. A version that feels real. You won't get there by reading quotes or doing surface-level journaling. You get there by doing the hard, sacred work of sitting with your shadow every single day. Not to fight it, but to listen, to learn, to remember. There is a reason most people avoid their inner world. It's not safe in there. It's chaos. It's wounds you thought were healed. Memories you swore you'd forgotten. Faces that still haunt you in dreams. You go through life building walls to keep that storm at bay. You fill your calendar. You scroll until your brain goes numb. You become obsessed with productivity or control or being needed. Anything to avoid the silence. Because in silence it finds you, and when it does, you remember. You never really escaped it. You just got better at running. But the shadow doesn't need to chase you. It waits. It waits until your guard is down, during heartbreak, during failure, during those quiet late-night moments when your soul whispers things your ego can't handle. That's when the old patterns return, the self-sabotage, the rage, the withdrawal, the need to control everything. The shadow doesn't come back to punish you. It comes back to reveal the places where you're still fractured, where the mask doesn't fit anymore. Jung understood this before the world had language for trauma. He knew that to evolve, to truly become whole, you had to stop editing yourself to fit someone else's story. But that's terrifying, isn't it? Because for most of your life, your survival depended on being accepted. You learned how to read the room before you even knew how to read a book. You became who they needed you to be. And somewhere along the line, you lost track of who you actually were. So now when a part of you wants to scream or cry or rage, your first instinct is to suppress it, to keep it hidden. Because you were taught that if you show too much, you'll lose love. But the truth is, the love you're afraid of losing was never real. It was conditional. It was earned through obedience, silence, performance. And the moment you stop playing that role, you start to find something terrifying and sacred. Your true voice. That voice is not polished. It's not always kind. It's not what you were taught a good person sounds like. It's raw, unapologetic, hungry. It carries grief and wisdom. It doesn't ask for permission. And when you first hear it, it might scare you, because it doesn't sound like the version of you that people applauded. But that's exactly the point. Your shadow voice isn't here to be liked. It's here to be heard. Every time you deny that voice, it doesn't disappear. It turns inward. It becomes self-hatred. It becomes anxiety. It becomes depression. Because the truth of you is suffocating beneath the performance. You're trying to heal by being good, by being spiritual, by staying positive. But healing doesn't happen in the light. It begins in the dark when you sit down with the parts of you you've disowned and say, I see you. I'm listening now. This isn't about indulging your darkness. It's about understanding it. There's a difference. The shadow isn't a monster. It's a mirror. It shows you where your wounds are, where you abandoned yourself, where your boundaries were crossed, where you stopped trusting. If you have the courage to face it, it becomes your ally. It becomes a guide through your own underworld. But if you keep running, it becomes your captor. And that's what most people don't realize. The shadow doesn't stop controlling you just because you ignore it. It controls you more. It picks your relationships. It fuels your addictions. It decides how you speak to yourself when no one's watching. Until you bring it into consciousness, it's like living with a ghost. You feel haunted by something you can't name. But once you name it, once you sit in the dark and look it in the eyes, you reclaim the power that's been hiding there all along. Start small, 10 minutes a day. Sit with yourself without distraction. Let the discomfort rise. Don't label it. Don't judge it. Just feel. And when something ugly comes up, a memory, a resentment, a craving, resist the urge to push it away. Ask it, what are you here to show me? Then listen, really listen, because sometimes the answers don't come as words, they come as grief, as heat in your chest, as tears you can't explain. That's your shadow speaking a language older than logic. You don't need to fix it. You need to witness it. And in doing so, you start to reclaim the pieces of yourself that were left behind, in the fire. The parts that were called too much, too emotional, too angry. You realize they weren't too much, they were just too real for a world addicted to pretending. And now, after all this time, you have a choice. You can keep performing, or you can begin the long, sacred process of becoming who you really are. The hardest part about facing your shadow is that it feels like betrayal. When you begin to uncover the parts of yourself you've hidden away, you might feel like you're breaking the trust of the people who raised you, the culture that shaped you, even the person you thought you were, because for decades you believed that hiding your flaws was protection. You learned to pretend, to conform, to survive. And now, when you dare to expose those shadows, it can feel like tearing down a fortress you spent a lifetime building. But what if that fortress is exactly what's been imprisoning you all along? What if the walls you built to protect yourself from rejection and pain are the same walls that have kept you disconnected from your own soul? Jung said the shadow is not just the dark side of the personality. It is the unconscious reservoir of everything rejected by the conscious mind. It's your soul's exiled kingdom. Imagine that kingdom as a wild forest, dense and tangled. You've never dared to step inside because it's unfamiliar and frightening. But there, among the shadows, lie the lost parts of yourself. Your true feelings, your raw desires, your authentic voice. And the longer you avoid it, the more the forest grows, choking your ability to breathe freely. The only way out is through. This journey requires courage beyond the ordinary. It demands that you sit with discomfort without running, that you watch your own fear and shame as if you were an observer, without trying to fix or escape. You will meet parts of yourself that don't want to be seen. Resentment toward a parent, jealousy of a friend, shame over a mistake you thought was long buried. You'll realize that these feelings are not anomalies. They are parts of your humanity. And when you start recognizing these feelings without judgment, something miraculous begins to happen. The energy trapped in repression starts to shift. The weight you've been carrying lightens. You start to feel more real, more alive. Not because the pain disappears, but because your relationship to it changes. Instead of running from it, you make space for it. One of the most powerful gifts of integrating your shadow is reclaiming your creativity and passion. Those parts of yourself that were shut down because they were too much or inappropriate don't just vanish, they transform. The anger that once made you feel out of control can become fierce protection of your boundaries. The sadness that made you feel weak can deepen your empathy. The fears that chained you can become fuel for bold action. Yet this transformation is subtle and often confusing. It doesn't happen overnight or in neat packages. It's a messy, non-linear process. You might feel like you're 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Some days you'll catch glimpses of your power. Other days, you'll be swallowed by doubt. And that's normal. That's part of the integration. Real growth happens in the tension between light and dark. What's essential to remember is that the shadow isn't an enemy to defeat, but a part of you to be embraced. Rejecting it only fractures your sense of self further, but accepting it creates wholeness. A wholeness that holds contradictions, imperfections, and mysteries. It allows you to be vulnerable without fear, to love yourself without conditions. As you walk this path, you may find that your relationships change too. People who love the mask version of you might resist the real you. Some friendships might fade, others will deepen in unexpected ways. This is the natural ripple effect of becoming authentic. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's also freeing. You are not alone in this. Every soul who has ever grown has faced their shadow. It's the rite of passage into true selfhood. So when you feel overwhelmed or uncertain, remember, you are stepping into the wild forest not to get lost, but to find the lost pieces of yourself waiting to come home. When you finally commit to this practice, looking into your shadow every day for 30 days, you begin to rewrite the story you've been telling yourself for years. It's like stepping into a room that's both familiar and strange, where the air feels heavy with unspoken truths and unseen wounds. At first, it might feel like chaos. Emotions rise up without warning. Memories surface that you thought were buried. You might question your own sanity. But this is the alchemy of transformation, breaking down old patterns to create space for new growth. Every moment you spend sitting with your shadow, you are practicing radical honesty. You're saying yes to your entire self, even the parts you once wanted to banish. And with that yes, a new kind of power emerges. It's not the loud, aggressive power the world often praises. It's quiet, steady, and unshakable. It's the power of someone who knows themselves deeply and refuses to hide. This power shows up in your relationships, your work, your creativity. You'll notice subtle shifts, a calmer presence in conflict, a clearer sense of your own needs, a fiercer protection of your boundaries. You'll begin to recognize the triggers that once controlled you and meet them with compassion instead of fear. And slowly, the person in the mirror stops feeling like a stranger. But here's the paradox. The more you integrate your shadow, the less you become attached to any fixed identity. You learn to flow with your inner world, to accept change and uncertainty. You realize that the self is not a rigid thing but a living, breathing process, and within that process lies freedom. So if you're ready to embark on this 30-day journey, know this: it will be the hardest thing you've ever done, and also the most rewarding. It's a commitment to yourself that says, I am worth knowing. I am worth loving even with all my shadows. And in that commitment you will find a new kind of peace, a peace that comes not from perfection, but from wholeness. If this video resonated with you, please take a moment to like it, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the work of Carl Jung and the journey of self-discovery. Your engagement helps this message reach others who are ready to face their own shadows and transform their lives. Thank you for watching, and remember, the path to light always runs through darkness.